Arsenal surprised the world with an emphatic 7-1 win away at PSV to surely put themselves in the quarter-finals of the Champions League. Now in this video we're going to talk about exactly the different ways Arsenal were able to get at PSV and why you can expect some of these to return and continue to be played in the next coming games. So let's get into it. Now going into this game, it was a game I expected Arsenal to ultimately come through against PSV, but I was worried about the fact that we obviously have our four best attackers out. And with the last couple of games with Arsenal, it's been quite clear that against teams that really do focus on the defensive side of the game against Arsenal, it is hard for us to break through. Mourinho doesn't make them line breaking runs and ultimately rely on a lot of magic from people like Nathan Nwaneri and Martin Odegaard to score goals, which hasn't been coming recently. Now against PSV, it was definitely already a different sort of opponent, a team that barely ever keep clean sheets, have kept one in their last 15 games in all competitions, and are known to continually attack teams and basically neglect defending a lot of the time, which is definitely going to be what cost them in this game. Now first of all, I want to say that how PSV attacked was never really going to work. Their whole idea was to kick the ball long to Luke de Jong to head the ball on, and Gabriel and Saliba were immense this game at winning headers and being physical, not letting him get the ball through. This would be their sort of way of getting up the pitch quickly and playing through that press so they could get the ball down to the wingers so the wingers could put great crosses in, which caused problems. Now we did see some cause problems in the first half where they hit the bar and Ryan made a mistake and Luke de Jong obviously heading it over from close range, but other than that we were very good at being able to get people into the box and sort of mark Luke de Jong, who didn't make that many good runs with the defenders around him. We allowed them to have overlaps on the wings possession, and this is where Miles Lewis-Skelly almost makes that mistake for a red card, because there was constant underlaps and overlaps on him, which made it hard for him to defend in many ways. Now because of this constant pressure that PSV had, they were often quite open in these half space areas in defensive transitions. As soon as they would lose the ball and Arsenal would have the ball up the field, there would be a lot of space centrally in which Odegaard or Partey could take, and they could turn and get Arsenal into even more space into them areas. Now there's no doubt about it, one of the big reasons why Arsenal was so successful in this game was because of PSV's poor defending, but also because Arsenal took more risks. When we actually got the ball down the wing with people like Trossard and Nwaneri, especially early on, you saw them do quite a lot of deep crosses to the back post like usual, where Mourinho, the other winger, and Rice would get in there. Now what was very interesting about this game is that I felt the fullbacks movement in attacking areas for Arsenal was incredible. I felt like Timber and Miles Lewis-Skelly were great early on, and then when Calafiori, he even got more space to drive and make them overlap in runs. We had a constant level of continuing having overlaps for these fullbacks, which allowed space into that centre of the park, which we haven't really had before. Usually we'd have the midfielder running in there, but what it allowed was people like Rice or any of the free back post players to actually come across into that space, which we actually took. This is how we scored our first goal. We got them all at the back post and Rice came into that forward area where he was able to find the pass by Trossard and cross it to back post, where Timber has overlapped into the box brilliantly. And this is kind of how we scored our second, with Miles Lewis-Skelly making an inside run this time, which was brilliantly found, him holding the ball up well, and he'd been able to put the ball in for Nathan Nwaneri, who has run in from that right hand side into that space in the near post to smash the ball in, which worked incredibly well in that first half. Now there is definitely a massive class in difference in some of the midfield and attacking players, even with Arsenal's team not necessarily being right there. As we spoke about, PSV are not a very good defensive side, and what they really struggled with was man marking and keeping up with runners. Arsenal's first goal, I think, is an absolute great example of this. You see the runners in from deep. Odegaard even overlaps the centre back at one point, bringing the player with him, which gets him out of position, and the whole move has been directed by Arsenal because they pull players out of position, they pull centre backs across, they pull midfielders out wide, which creates that space which they end up taking in the 1v1 duels, which is something that continually happened all game. And when you look at Arsenal's average positions on the map, it was no longer like anyone was playing on an island and everyone was playing very close together. Almost the entire team were in a line, so it allowed players to make different runs at different times and not necessarily be set on one player, and everyone obviously tucked in and then pushed out wide. This allowed moments where Arsenal could have people like Odegaard come deeper into that space, Marino could occupy the right half space and come across, which then allowed Odegaard make that deeper run later where he could get that carrying space to run into. This kept happening where Marino was pulling players out of position and Odegaard had that whole right hand side to basically run into, and in the second half I thought he was excellent with some of the passes that he found, obviously having that brilliant assist for Calafiori late on, but also being able to get them shots away, which are very important, which we want from him. This also allowed people to be diverted to Odegaard, and if they didn't go towards Odegaard then he can have that run, but if not he can also pass the ball out to Ethan Nwaneri. This gave Nwaneri a little bit more space, a little bit more one-on-one ability, because at the second half at that point we were kind of putting them all apart, and Timber's movements consistently off that right hand side, even coming into the centre a few times. There's a few times Timber made runs through and he was the only one there, which we even saw people like Calafiori do, which shows the amount of variety Arsenal are having in their forward areas, which is something they're going to have to continue to do. This allowed Nwaneri, like we were saying, to get them one-on-ones where he could put the ball in, and with the poor goalkeeper and poor defending, Arsenal kept getting chances where the ball would bounce for them. And as soon as Arsenal across the whole pitch in the entire game could bait a couple of players in and have the confidence to actually go past them or make that inside pass, which we haven't seen too much, it was becoming a clear indication that Arsenal were a better team and could find them spaces, and they were consistently getting more confident. People were actually running at players and we were able to get a lot of shots away. Even in the second half when Nwaneri had 3 or 4 shots where it was quite clear that we were setting up for him, which I thought really worked well. Now a few players I think really helped this in the system. I think Trossard was excellent, obviously Timber we will go into in another video, and I thought Odegaard in that second half really stepped up. But for me, Declan Rice was insane. I think in that first half he had the sort of initiative to kind of run into them spaces, obviously that brilliant cross for the first goal, but his new role, which we kind of saw against Forest, which is a little bit of an adaptation to his role obviously before in his usual role, is much better. Instead of having him as the one that's always making them running moves through the central area, being the only way we can sort of have the ball lifted through them areas with Havertz not there, we use Rice a lot deeper now. He sits deeper, he works with players around him, and often works with Marino to win them second balls and get the ball up the field. You see a lot of the time where Arsenal shift the ball up into the air and Marino and Rice will both run to it and they would leave it for the other so Arsenal can get out on one of the sides. This can then lead to Rice making them overlapping or underlapping runs. It's the second phase in the counter attack, but you don't really want him doing it as the initial attack. I think that is what we've learned. And if we do get the ball in settled play and get around the final third, then you can put him into the box and get him into them key areas. But you want him being one of your main carriers on the break, one of your main people from deeper, not being someone that is going up too high too quickly, because also he can recover. But I think even more, other than tactics and all the analysis, I think the reason why Arsenal were able to be so successful is because they took risks and they didn't really try to be overly defensive. You know, there was many points in the game where Arsenal weren't actually recovering very well. I felt like Odegaard, even Partey and Rice weren't really running back, but I think it was a tactical thing. We allowed them to get 3 or 2 men against our fullbacks consistently, and I think Timber was excellent defensively, and allowed them to put crosses in because we believed that we could do enough to sort of stop Luke de Jong scoring, which we did. They only scored from a stupid penalty that we gave away. And this allowed us, as soon as we won that ball back, as soon as we head the ball out, which I think Gabriel and Saliba were immense all game, we could get on that counter attack, and we saw it a lot in that second half where Odegaard was in space, putting the ball out to Nwaneri who could have a shot, and Trossard was always making good central runs as well, which I think really helped. And we sort of had the idea that if you are not in the area where you need to defend like some of the other players, then you should make that attacking run forward. We saw Calafiori make it, we saw Timber make it when the ball was progressed on the other side, and you can be that extra man if you need to be, and I think that works really well. And it's not the first time Arsenal have done this. People are going to act like, well, they never score this many goals usually, which is just not true. When teams do open up, Arsenal can destroy them. We saw it away against Sporting when they won 5-1. We saw it more importantly away against Crystal Palace in the Premier League when they won 5-1. Where in that game, I don't think Arsenal were flawless at all, but Crystal Palace tried to play an open game and got destroyed with the clinicalness of Arsenal, but also for the fact that the big chances they were created. In this game, I felt like that was very similar. XG wise, Arsenal only had around about 2, but even then, some of the shots didn't count as XG. Some of the efforts that we had, which were on target and actually got saved, I think 2 big ones, didn't get given because the referee didn't give a corner for some reason. So some of the stats are a little bit misleading. I think our XG should have been a lot higher because realistically, some of the chances are key. Like that Odegaard one for his first goal, realistically, in my opinion, is almost guaranteedly going to be a goal. But there is so much great to talk about Arsenal in this game. Defensively, I think they really stood up, even though there was some mistakes, and I don't think every player on the pitch played their best throughout the entire game. They were still able to comfortably win because they took them risks. Central areas of deeper runners coming in and helping. And off the ball, I think Arsenal did completely outclass them. Now, this is something I do want to also touch on. Off the ball and the pressing was incredible. Odegaard, yet again, I think this is where he really was actually good in the first half compared to him on the ball. He was able to sort of dictate the tempo and understand when to press and when not to. And as soon as PSV made one or two risky passes where they maybe put the ball out wide and it tried to go in centrally, we would be on them. Marino, I thought, was excellent when he was deeper and he was pressing. I thought Trossard was great. And even when Neri sometimes was a bit confused, but did really well on that right-hand side, I think Timber helped him up brilliantly. We were able to make their main players come deeper so they couldn't kick the ball long, and then put them in a trap where we got around them and able to win the ball back. In the first half, they barely really got many attacks, PSV, until we kind of gave up a little bit of chance after we were 3-0 up, because they could not actually access them areas because of the pressing. They had to keep going long, in which we obviously just had Luke de Jong on lock, and then all the other players were not really that tall and going to win duels, which didn't happen a lot for them. And I do think that is a key point to make. I think people forget about it, but Arsenal off the ball are still one of the best teams in Europe. They have been for years now under Arteta. It's not really a surprise. And even without a striker, managed to score 7 goals and create a amount of chances that they did. It could have been even a couple or more. They were so good going forward. Everyone really did their part. They played well off each other. I think Marino came deeper well. And the most important thing was getting central access. I think Arsenal were a lot more free in this game. We were able to switch the ball quickly to Neri, who could get them one-on-ones. We were allowed Trossard to have the ball deeper where he prefers it and work with other players. And we allowed a lot of the teams to actually be exceptional at what they are. Rice played a little bit deeper, made them runs when he needed to, carried the ball. Calafiori found that space and was able to drive and work with the players on that left-hand side, which was brilliant. And Neri was allowed to have shots in and around the box, which was the main thing. And even then, Odegaard got the goal, I think, in the start of the second half and was so much better. He was able to drive into that area, work with Marino really well, and find runners that take that opportunity to run into the box. We saw it many times, you know. Anyone was really given that opportunity. If you've got enough speed and you can make that run, it was the best thing. And I think our 2 fullbacks were excellent all game at doing that, so that is a brilliant thing. Now, I don't really do videos like this where I talk about the team overall. I usually do player basis, and my next video will be a player base from this game. But overall, it's a brilliant day, and I do think it should be encouraged and we should be applauding it, because a lot of people kind of given up on Arsenal. And our Champions League form has been incredible this season. We've been one of the best teams in this competition by far. We deserve to probably be in the quarterfinals, which looks like it's going to happen, and we could do anything we can if we can just stay a little bit more fit, wait for Saka and Marseille to come back against the Madrid sides and keep going. So that's the main thing. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.